and I know you've been to this site many times before, but go out to w3schools.com/js/default.asp. /default.asp. Okay, does it say JavaScript tutorial?
Yep.
Okay, now, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think I am. But that said, if you look along the left-hand side, I think you know the intro, the where to, the output, etc. I think we can go all the way down on here to functions, okay? And they talk about function syntax, function invocation, function return, etc. That isn't really that new. When you go halfway down on this page, functions used as variable values. We started to talk about this yesterday, but it's more here, okay? So, not this second, but I'm not going to lecture that long today. When I get done, I'd like you, if you would, to take about an hour, start there. Then go into objects, and after objects, go to events. I don't really think you're going to need to look at the strings, okay, or the string methods or the number methods. Array you might want to take a quick look at, okay, but then go all the way down, if you would, all the way down. Just keep going down to where it says, if you keep arrowing down, you see where it says hoisting?
Yeah.
Okay, look at that. Look at strict mode. Look at this let const arrow function. That should be pretty good for what's in there. You might want to have a quick look, if you care, on JS version ES5 and ES6 and JS JSON. Look at the forms thing. Look at the objects thing, the functions thing, the DOM thing, browser DOM thing, AJAX, JSON, Web API, and the JS versus jQueries. That's most of the rest of it. Because what I think I'll do is today just go over the first 2 or 3 chapters of that eloquent JavaScript I told you. Tomorrow I'm going to jump into this because this is more general or generic. So I will give you some time today, even if I only go from now until 1:15 or whatever. Take 45 minutes to a good hour, okay, and look at it, and then you can continue on with the website you've been working on. Does that sound all right?
Yeah.
All right. Okay, so that said, you can bring up the eloquent JavaScript PDF. I'm going to at least go through the first few chapters in there.
I was going to try and take a look at that last night, but I ended up working.
That's okay, because most of the stuff in chapter 1 and in chapter 2 you already know. All right, so I'm literally going to take it nice and slow. The plan again is this. The rest of this week we're talking JavaScript. All next week we're talking JavaScript. All right, hold on. Even if you didn't read any of it, can you please bring up the eloquent JavaScript PDF? And like I said, it's okay. By no means is this going to make you an expert. And chapters 1 and 2, a lot of it is review. A lot of it is stuff you already have. And some of it doesn't even matter, to be honest with you. They talk about how computers are zeros and ones and stuff like that. But there's just a few things that I want to highlight. If you didn't look at it at all, I think what I'm going to do then is I'm just going to go through chapters 1 and 2 because that's mainly almost all review, okay? We'll do that today. So for tomorrow, I will go over chapter 3, which is functions, chapter 4, which is data structures, objects, and arrays, chapter 5, which is higher order functions, and maybe 6, which is the secret life of objects. All right. Now, when I said that, we'll do that, but I'm also going to try to blend in the stuff from W3 Schools. All right. So look at that stuff, the stuff I told you to look at. If you've got any questions on anything, come to class, and we'll start by going through that stuff. And then we'll go in. So ideally, at least, by between today, tomorrow, and Friday, by those 3 days, we will be through anywhere between the first 7 chapters and the first 10 chapters of this book that we're in. Okay? And we'll see how it works, because I want to give you at least one whole class period next week. At the beginning of the week, I'll give you the lab for this section. And I'm going to give you at least one whole class period to work on that. Have you found out yet? You said there's a day in September that you're not going to be here. Do you know when that is? And you don't have to tell me right this second, but tell me when you can so we can plan around that.
Yeah.
All right? Okay.
I want to say it's either like the 4th or the 8th, I can't remember exactly.
Well, because the 4th is already next week. The 8th is the Tuesday we come back. That's what I was planning on having your test, so then we push it to Wednesday.
Yeah, I'll have to find out.
All right. If you can do that, that'd be great.
Yeah, I will.
All right. So let's just quickly look in the table of contents. Like I said, Chapter 1, values, types, and operators. Well, you know what values are. You know what numbers are. You know what strings are, etc. I don't think there's much of anything. A couple things I annotated because I ran off a hard copy of it in here, but not too much. Chapter 2 is on program structure. Again, you know most of this stuff, if not virtually all of it. That'll get us to about the first 40 pages. Chapter 3 is on functions. And I want to make sure, because in there, even though it's not a big section, they talk about arrow functions. They talk about closures. You're also going to see it in the W3 schools thing. All right? So please take a look at both of those. You will have time today. We may be done by 1 o'clock today. All right? So take from 1 to 2 or 2:30 or whatever you need. Look through that W3 school stuff. Start flipping through this PDF too. All right? So then tomorrow we'll pick it up between tomorrow and Friday. All right? We'll do the W3 school stuff, and we'll at least go through 3, 4, and 5, which are functions, data structures, higher order functions, and 6, the secret life of objects. They have in here, they're not big, they're about 10 pages, but they've got projects. I haven't even looked at these, so I don't know how good they are or are not. I'm not concerned with those. Now, just so you know, and I'm going to have you do this, on the table of contents, if you start whipping down, if you look on page VI or Roman numeral 6, it says 11, asynchronous programming. That's the key to note. Okay? So we're going to spend a lot of time. It's only 20 pages, but we're going to spend a lot of time talking about that. All right. Then 13 is JavaScript in the browser. Yeah, that's pretty important. 14, we're going to review stuff with the DOM. That's why W3 Schools has a thing on the DOM that I just showed you too. All right. And your first test, you'll have to do DOM manipulation. 15 is on events. In other words, programming a button so when you click it, whatever happens is what you want to have happen. Really about the only thing that we did was we set up input type equals submit, which automatically submitted it to where you told it to go, and input type equal reset. We didn't do a lot of work with programming buttons. We did a little bit in the BMI stuff, but we'll do some more. We'll take a look at the code that's in there, okay? All right. Let's see. The drawing on canvas, I'm not going to, that's literally using your screen like a canvas. I'm not going to go over that. It's not that it's important or not. There's not enough time. We will go over 18, which is on HTTP and forms. So you make sure you have an understanding of that stuff. 19, I'm not going to go over this pixel art editor. I'll go over 20, but kind of quickly because it's an intro to Node. All right, just so you see it. We'll skip 21, this project or skill sharing website, unless I look at it and I think, oh, that's really good. So that's going to be it. So we should sometime, no later than Monday or Tuesday, we should be able to finish this. All right, and I'll tell you what I'll do. What I'll ask is Friday, I'll ask that you take whatever it is. Do you know how to put stuff? You know how to put stuff out on GitHub, right?
Yeah, pretty much right.
Okay, well, we can go back and review that too if you want. And I think that there's a way that you can do that. You can send me an invitation, which means, you know, and so you'll do part 1 of the website, whatever you got done by Friday. And then by next Friday, I want to finish that up. Okay? All right. So I'm going to jump into chapter 1, which I think is page 1. It's pretty close otherwise. No, it's not. All right. 10. Yeah, it's page 10. So if you put 10 up there in the top and you put that number in, it's called values, types, and operators. All right, and like I said, they come in here and they talk about the fact that computers can only understand zeros and ones. That's no big thing. You should understand, I know we've talked about this before, as far as JavaScript is concerned, there literally is no difference between whole numbers and numbers with a fractional component. It doesn't care. It looks at everything is a type of number. So either one of those, if there's a type of operator, and if you do type of on 12, it's going to say number. If you do type of on pi, it's going to say it's a number. You know that if you want to get, if you want to grab a decimal or a decimal that's parsed float, if you want to grab a whole number, it's parsed in. You know that. But the point is, it's still internally to JavaScript. It's just one type. All right. And that's a lot of what's in that number section, is they start to talk about a lot of that. They mention in there that there's an arithmetic section. It's not precise. I don't know if you know this or not. If you write yourself a computer program and you say x equals 0.1 plus 0.1 plus 0.1 and you do it 10 times and you print out the answer, there's a very good chance it's not going to give you 1. It'll give you either 1.0000816 or 0.9999357, something like that. And they talk about that in here, the fact that math is an inconsistent science in computer programming. Some languages handle it better than others. JavaScript is, for lack of, as far as I'm concerned, kind of middle of the road. It's better than some, not as good as others. All right? Okay. And again, you maybe even heard me tell this story already, but why is it important? Okay, and the reason is, again, like I said, if I told you this already, sorry, but I'll always remember this. When I bought a car and it was all paid off, and I was waiting for the title and waiting for the title and waiting for the title, you know, I wasn't getting it. And I got a thing in the mail, a postcard from the bank that I financed it from. I still owed 8 cents. And it was a joke, you know, as far as I was concerned. And first of all, they spent more on the postcard than what I owed. Yeah. And second of all, you know, so my wife even said later, she said, that's why you're such an ass. But I sent him a check for 8 cents. You know, and it was like, yeah, that was probably stupid. I should have just went in there and given him 8 pennies or whatever. All right, but the point is, that program, when it set up my payment schedule, wasn't totally correct. All right, and it may not, you know, who cares? Think about the millions of people who have loans. Literally, house loans, car loans, whatever. And if you're off, and if it's not in the bank's favor, they're losing a hell of a lot of money. All right. There are some special numbers they mention in here, and those are infinity and negative infinity. Big deal. You know what NaN is. What does NaN stand for? Yeah. All right, that's fine, but I'm just saying, if you try to do, like if I say, what is hello minus goodbye, it's going to come up with not a number. Yeah. All right, you can check, you can run the is NaN check. Remember that NaN, the N is, both N's are capitalized, the A is lowercase. Same thing if you say is NaN, it's little I, little s, big N, little a, big N. Okay? All right, strings, big thing about JavaScript, strings can be in uppercase, strings can be in they can be in single quotes, they can be in double quotes. All right? And it really doesn't matter to the system. It's just that if you start it with a single quote, you got to end it with a single quote, and same with double quotes. All right. And you should know by now, and it depends on the package that you're using. Sometimes when if you write a JavaScript program and you want a new line, you remember how to do it? What is it? \n, right? Mm-hmm. But if you're writing on an HTML page and you want a new line, more often than not, it's going to be a BR tag. Yeah. Okay? All right. They talk about that in there. They do get into, on the bottom of page 14, this isn't a big thing, but at least you've heard it. They talk about the fact, a little bit about Unicode. So if you remember, one of the things that we would put in, one of the things that you magically get when you set up a template in Visual Studio Code is you got a meta tag that says char set equals UTF-8. You might remember that, you might not remember that. UTF means Universal Transition or Translation, I don't remember, one of the two. Format, it's 8-bit, it means you're using Unicode. Originally, when they started with computers, you know, the only language you really had to worry about was English. Really. All right. I still remember taking students to a computer show. This was many, many years ago when they used to have these computer shows every year in Chicago. And I would take them. And we went one year. I thought this was cool. That you typed into your computer in English, and they had a guy on the other end. I mean, it was just like here and here. But it came out in Chinese. And then he typed in Chinese, and it came back out in English. All right. Why is that? Why am I telling you that? Because Unicode came about because we needed character sets for other languages. Now there are well over 100,000 characters. I don't know how many characters are in the Unicode character set, but to my knowledge, it's well over 100,000. All right. Remember, on top of page 15, you use the plus sign for concatenating strings together, as they show right there. All right. Then right underneath it, you see the example that says half of 100 is? You see that example? That's a template literal. Those are backticks at the beginning and the end. Backtick is right next to your number 1 up on your keyboard. All right. And if you want to print out either a variable or do a calculation like they show there, it's got to be within curly braces, and it has to have a $sign at the beginning. I want you to write code that other people look at and go, oh good, he's writing stuff the new fandangled way, so to speak. So we're going to do it like this when we can. All right. A unary operator is one that has just one operator. So for instance, you know, X or minus X or whatever, just one. Binary operator has got 2. Ternary operator has got 3. All right. Booleans, true, false. You know that stuff. Logical operators, I'm up to page, looks like about 17. All right, ampersand, ampersand for and, pipe sign for or. You remember what short circuiting is? So if I say, look at the example that they have right there. All right, they have console.log true, ampersand, ampersand false, okay? Imagine instead of true, imagine the true said x greater than 3. And for the false, imagine it was y less than 6. All right. If x is not, if the first half of it is false, you don't check the second half with an and. With an or, if the first half is true, you don't check the second half because there's no need to in those cases. I believe that if you put a single ampersand in or a single pipe sign, then it checks them both. All right. So if you would want both checks to take place, you could do that. Not, the universal for not is the exclamation point. They talk about empty values, and so if you're not there, please get to page 18. And they say for all intents and purposes, basically, undefined and null are the same thing. All right. It says the difference is an accident of JavaScript's design. It doesn't matter most of the time. I recommend treating them as mostly interchangeable. Right? It pretty much is the truth. Okay. Automatic type conversion, if you move up to page 19. I don't know if they've got any examples I even want to show. But remember, if I do something like this, if I say add the string, let's say 17, okay, and I add to that hello. It'll become 17 hello. It'll actually work. All right, so it'll take the number 17. If I say plus hello, it'll say 17 hello. It'll convert that to a string. If you try to add string 7 plus string 7, usually what's going to happen is it's going to give you string 7, 7. All right, I've seen it on occasions where it'll actually make them both numbers and do the math. All right, not that big a thing one way or the other. The short circuiting is shown there then on page 20. I guess they just had you look at that. And then there's a summary, but there's nothing I think that we haven't talked about already. Anything in there you didn't know? All right, and some of it's, I got to remember it or relearn it,
Yeah.
but you know. All right, then let's move to chapter 2. Like I said, we'll probably be done by 1 o'clock. All right, expressions and statements. An expression is a fragment of code. A statement is a fragment of code, but it has a semicolon on the end. You know we're going to be using use strict. You also know that even though you can get away with not putting semicolons in, it's still a good idea to do so, always. All right. They talk about bindings if you turn up to page 23, and it's kind of interesting, but what they call bindings, they're variables. And that's really all they are. They're talking about variables right there. I don't know why they use that word. Maybe it does have some special significance. I guess I've never known it to have special significance, but again, like I said, maybe it does. I don't know. JavaScript, remember one thing about it, and I mean, this isn't a later example, but I can go, if I use let or if I use var. So let's say I say let age equal 27. And then below it later I can say age equal false. You know how I can change the type of variable that's in there? You can do that in JavaScript because it's very forgiving. It's what's known as a typeless language. You understand what I'm saying by that? Okay. All right. Binding names, turning up to page 25. Again, right in the middle of that section, it says binding names. Are you there? Mm-hmm. It shows you it's indented. Those are all the keywords. All right. And var is still a keyword, so is let. All right. We already talked about var and let. I'm not going to talk about those at least right now. All right. The environment. Here's a little bit about functions, but not really very much. Prompt, we're not going to use that. There's no reason. The only, it's very, the author actually put this very well. You see where it says the console.log function? A little further down on the page. Can you see that on page 26? Yeah. Right up above it, look at the sentence above. The prompt function isn't used much in modern web programming, mostly because you have no control over the way the resulting dialog looks, but can be helpful in toy programs and experiments. And that's really when it's going to be used, when you're testing stuff. You won't be writing websites that are going to have prompts in there. I mean, that would be kind of dumb and it would look ugly. All right, console.log. I talked to you yesterday about the importance of console.log, how we're going to actually be using console.log. All right, because when you actually run a node program, what's going to happen is you're going to say node followed by the name of a JavaScript file, okay? And then what's going to happen is it's going to basically bring up anything you did at console.log is going to show right on the screen, and the program is just going to sit there and wait for you to do something. And then we're going to go out to our own website that we're going to be creating, and then it'll do different stuff. You know, if we say this, it'll bring up the home page. If we say that, it'll bring up an about page, etc. All right, you know what return values are. If a function doesn't have a return statement, it doesn't have a return value. So it still returns, but it returns nothing. Okay. Okay. Control flow. All right. Nothing big there. Control execution. There's really nothing big there. If you turn up all the way, please, to page 28, there's some code about a third of the way down on the page that says let number equals number prompt, pick a number, etc. You see that? Is there anything in that code that doesn't make sense to you? We did a lot of work where typically we just used an alert right there that says your number is the square root of console.log. The only difference in a regular JavaScript program is that'll print that in that console area. I showed you have to hit F12 and bring up the developer tools. I'm going to be using the console exclusively when I teach the first year people because of the fact it's used in Node. All right. Anything you put between curly braces is known as a block. Nothing really new there. Turning up to page 30, you know what a while loop is. You can see the syntax if you've forgotten it. Remember, if it's just one line of code, this is halfway down or a third of the way down on page 30, that you don't have to use curly braces if there's only one statement, but it's always a good idea to do it anyway. All right, they don't even mention it here, but not only is there a while, there's a do while. Oh, there is. It's shown on the next page. Remember that a while loop and a for loop, they're pre-tests, so if the test is false originally, you never go into the loop body. With a do while, it's a post-test, so you always run the body of the loop at least once regardless. Okay. Code indentation starting on the bottom of line 31. You should indent code just because it makes it easier to read. That's enough said. On page 32, you see the code in there for the for loop? Anything in there that doesn't make sense to you? Remember, if you want to prematurely break out of a loop, all right, if you want to prematurely break out of a loop, you use the break statement. You see that down on the page? Does it make sense why you'd get 21 back? You'd run it the first time, it'd be 20. 20 modulo 7 is not equal to 0, so you skip that if statement. And you skip the break. You go back up, you add it, now it's 21. 21 modulo 7 is 0. So you print it out and then you break. Okay? Modulo, I think you remember. What's an infinite loop? It's a loop you literally cannot get out of. Right? Okay. So let's see. Updating binding succinctly. If you turn up to page 34, hopefully you remember to say counter plus equal 1 is a shortcut for counter plus 1. You can use plus equal, minus equal, times equal, divide equal, modulo equal. And you can even use the plus equal with strings. Will work as well. Okay. Switch, starting on the bottom of page 34, that's an ugly if. Might be easier to write it as a switch. They show an example on the top of page 35. Again, we talked about switches the other day, and I think you even mentioned, yeah, you remembered using those. So, all right, capitalization on the bottom of page 35. Remember, two JavaScript. Those are 4 different variables. Does that make sense? Okay. Comments, you know how to write single line comments are shown on page 36. All right, and on the bottom of the page, they show a multi-line comment. Okay. That's it. I didn't think there was anything, I mean, looping through a triangle, I didn't think that would make sense. FizzBuzz. Actually, if you look at that program, you're not going to do that, but you see this FizzBuzz, it's on page 38. That's actually going to be one of the programs that's going to be on your first Java assignment, to write that in Java. So, chessboard, no. So tomorrow, between tomorrow, look at you at least 3, 4, and 5 in here, and look at all that stuff I told you to look at inside of the W3 school stuff. Okay, because we're going to go over all that. We're going to hit it hard tomorrow. We're going to hit it hard on Friday. And hopefully by next week, like I said, we'll be able to, in the middle of the week, we'll be able to finish this book and have gone over that stuff. Then you'll be ready to take the test and you get your assignment in there also. I'll give you, let's say it's a week from Friday and I give you the assignment. You're going to get a week to work on it. And I'll make sure you get at least 1 whole class period to work on it, maybe part of another one. All right. The only other thing that, well, let's just stop it.